days after October 7th, and we deeply admire her accomplishments and feel beyond honored to learn from her directly today. For all of us, it takes great courage to bear witness to the sexual violence and other crimes of violence against women that we will learn about and discuss today. We know that statistically many in this room have experienced sexual violence or have close relationships with someone who has experienced sexual violence. On the Hebrew calendar, our program falls in line with what has become known in Jewish women's circles as Shabbat Dinah, named for Dinah. The story this week in Parshat Vayishlach is the first account of sexual violence in the Torah. Many Reform Jewish communities across Israel and other women's communities in the Jewish world are marking Shabbat Dinah, standing with survivors, creating spaces of compassion and safety. And we are saying clearly, we hear you, we believe you, you are one of us. And so we are holding ourselves with care. Should you feel you need to take a break, please do so. A volunteer at the back of the room is also available to help you find a quiet space, as well as Samantha Miller, a social worker from JFCS, is graciously on standby if you feel you would like to talk. Her contact information is available on the table and online and outside at the registration. And turning up toward our program, I'd like to call on Sarah Charney. Sarah is a member of the Leadership Council of Women of Blossom and is the immediate past president of Women of Reform Judaism, the large Jewish women's organization in North America. First Canadian.
If you don't yet know Rabbi Splansky, this morning you will get a sense of why she is so treasured by our congregation. I would like to introduce her more formally. Yael Splansky is the senior rabbi of Holy Blossom Potential, Toronto's first synagogue. She joined the congregation upon her ordination from Hebrew Union College Jewish Institute of Religion in Cincinnati, Ohio, 27 years ago, and became Holy Blossom's 13th senior rabbi in 2014. In celebration of a quarter century of leadership, she now proudly holds the Baskin Garson Senior Rabbinic Chair. Rabbi Splansky currently serves as past president of the Toronto Board of Rabbis. She is on the date Dean of the Reform Rabbis of Greater Toronto and on the President's Rabbinic Council of the Hebrew Union College. She is a rabbinic fellow of the Shalom Hartman Institute in Jerusalem and the editor of our Sidur Pirchei Kodesh. This text, our prayer book, is a significant contribution to our daily lives as a community. As in Torah, which you turn over and over to find new meaning, this text is creatively filled with poetry and wisdom to add insight and invite reflection. Rabbi Splansky was recently recognized by the Canadian Parliament with the Queen's Platinum Jubilee Award for her commitment to refugee relief, support and advocacy for the unhoused, and building bridges among faith communities. She has the unique privilege of being a fourth-generation Reform rabbi. Together with her husband, Adam Saul, she raises 3 mentions. We appreciate her engagement and guidance with this important yet challenging topic of sexual violence on October 7th, both at our Seeking Justice event in 2024 and again today. Dahlia Lithwick is a regular contributing analyst at MS Now and senior editor at Slate Magazine. Her work has appeared in the New York Times, Harper's, the New Yorker, the Washington Post, the New Republic, and Commentary. She is host of Amicus, Slate's award-winning bi-weekly podcast about the law and the U.S. Supreme Court. Her recent book, Lady Justice, became an instant New York Times bestseller. We were privileged to learn from Dahlia about the impact women are having in the law when she launched her book here at Holy Blossom Temple. Dahlia earned her BA in English from Yale University and her JD from Stanford University. She has held visiting faculty positions at the University of Georgia Law School, the University of Virginia School of Law, and the Hebrew University Law School in Jerusalem. Dahlia has been part of the international team of legal experts seeking justice for the victims of sexual violence on October 7th. She brought her insights to the women's advocacy group's first event on this topic, Seeking Justice, in March 2024. We are privileged to learn from her again today, and she joins us live from Israel. Dr. Gila Ben-Shimol is a criminologist, consultant, educator, and victim advocate who works with survivors, faith institutions, and leaders to prevent and address sexual violence and other abuses of power. She has been the senior advisor on research and learning at the SRE Network, Safety, Respect, and Equity, whom she helped guide its launch in 2018. Gila is also the director of faith-based and community accountability at Ampersand's Restorative Justice and the ethics case consultant for the Ba'ad HaKavod of the Rabbinical Assembly, the International Association of Conservative Rabbis. Dr. Ben-Shimol holds a PhD in sociological criminology from the University of Guelph and is a trained restorative and transformative justice facilitator. Dr. Ben-Shimol was the expert consultant to the Union for Reform Judaism in their process to address accountability and provide restorative justice for all victims, survivors of abuse and misconduct in URJ spaces. She co-designed the Roadmap to Accountability, a comprehensive plan for restorative justice work that the URJ is implementing for and with victims, survivors, and the community. Gila's first 10+ year career as a Jewish educator informed her understanding of the need to address victimization of all kinds. She lived in Toronto and was raised in a Spanish Moroccan Jewish community, which was built by the families who fled Tangier. Imagine that you are a legal scholar and human rights advocate and have significant experience over many years drafting and sharing reports on gender-based violence and human rights abuses with any number of UN agencies, and those agencies responding appropriately to your findings. Now, consider that after October 7th, you are still that same scholar, but now you are submitting reports to a whole host of UN agencies responsible for women's rights, children's rights, special rapporteurs, and working groups. However, you and your reports are being ignored. That is the situation that our esteemed guest, Dr. Kocha Elkayan-Levy, online, found herself in when she spoke with a group of women representing two organizations, Women of Reform Judaism and the Women's Rabbinic Network, who had arrived in Israel in February 2024 on a solidarity mission to bear witness to the atrocities of October 7th. Dr. Elkayan-Levy shared that the overwhelming silence from the UN was shocking and extremely painful. She expressed in a podcast interview with Rabbi Liz Hirsch, CEO of Women of Reform Judaism, that it was at that moment that she realized it was her responsibility to create a meticulous historical record of the experiences of the women, and especially the experiences of sexual abuse. After further global rejections, Dr. Elkayan-Levy decided that there must be a civil commission and that she would lead what is now known as the Civil Commission on October 7th Crimes by Hamas against Women and Children. For this work, she has been awarded numerous prizes, including the prestigious 2024 Israel Prize, Israel's highest civilian honor, as well as the Women of Reformed Judaism's Dr. Jane Evans Pursuit of Justice Award to a true champion of humanity and justice. And we were honored to have presented this award to Dr. Elkayam Levy in person at our Social Justice Conference in Washington, D.C. in April 2025. Dr. Elkayam Levy is now also deeply connected with Canada, as she continues to work with Professor Erwin Kotler, coining a new term, genocide, and has had speaking engagements at the Halifax International Security Forum. She is also a good friend of Women of Holy Blossom, and specifically our Women's Advocacy Group, as she participated previously on a panel discussion with some of our other distinguished guests here this morning. We are delighted to presenting this program in partnership with the Canadian Jewish Women's Collective. Please join me in extending a very warm welcome to all of our esteemed participants, both in Toronto and in Israel.
Ohad, we turn the microphone over to you to start our program, to teach us, to help us understand more of the context, and then we will turn to you both for discussion.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
No.
First of all, thank you so much for this introduction. Want to say that we are at the very end of publishing our report representing the archives. So I feel like this description of the journey was even emotional for me. We started this journey not by choice, but by necessity. We knew that we have to act, and we have to act quickly. And we had amazing women like Dalia, like Gila, amazing women's rights advocates all around the world that made sure the world knows, the world understands that global leaders believe Israeli women. And we found ourselves fighting denial so very quickly. And it was painful. It was very, very painful. So I just want to, first of all, thank the Holy Blossom community, thank the Jewish Women's Collective, my friends over there, the women that go with me since the very beginning, since the very first days. I'll start by saying that, you know what, I do want to start perhaps with the end. So as I said, we began this journey documenting the sexual atrocities of October 7th on a daily basis, collecting evidence, collecting testimonies, collecting materials, analyzing each and every item, viewing it again and again and again to make sure we do no mistakes. We don't do any mistakes, involving forensics experts, 3 of them. You know what? We feel like we have to do the most thorough work in light of unprecedented denial. And as I said, even from the most respected organizations that I continue to teach of their importance. You know, while you were presenting me, I was thinking, it didn't end the conflict within us. I continue to teach of these organizations. I continue to teach my students of their importance. But as an expert, I knew something was deeply wrong. I knew something was deeply wrong when they were not responding to our communications. When I appeared before the most important committee in the world, a day after this committee did not mention our hostages, did not mention October 7th had even happened. And today, just a couple of weeks ago, the UN Special Rapporteur on Violence Against Women publicly denied the crimes. And she's denying the findings of the UN in itself and spreading lies and spreading disinformation, and in many ways is complicit with these terror organizations that have succeeded in many ways in what they were coming to achieve. So let me begin with the end. and I apologize for the details. And if it's difficult for anyone, I want to say that after 2 years of investigation, together with the Raoul Wallenberg Center for Human Rights, and together with Professor Erwin Kotler, that always supports me and give me the courage to continue, we found that women and men were systematically and similarly sexually abused and tortured. We found 13 distinct forms of abuse, 13 patterns that were repeated across different locations. We see cruelty that is carried out with a degree of sadism that is shocking. The hatred is evidence, the enjoyment of conducting these crimes, the celebration of the crimes, the documentation of terrorists themselves doing this. I often say that visibility became a weapon in itself. Visibility of women's bodies carried out into Gaza. Victims were burned, mutilated, bodies were violently desecrated. Much of this was filmed, as I said, by the terrorists themselves. Women were raped and then murdered. Women were shot in their faces and genital areas again and again and again. I want to say that it took us a while to understand that we're seeing and hearing testimonies of women being shot in the faces. For instance, a mom in Kfar Aza, before she was taken into Gaza, she saw her daughter being shot in the face. Of forensic expert telling us that women were shot in their faces. Of first responders repeating this. Of images that we have showing shootings not only in the face but also in the groin area. Of morgue staff repeating the same things. And once you compile the information and analyze everything, you start to understand that this was a pattern to erase women's personhood. Why else to shoot their faces? Many victims were found handcuffed and bound. As I said, men too were subjected to sexual violence. And of course, many of those patterns repeated in captivity. Unfortunately, our hostages, men and women, have endured sexual torture. So with this, I want to say that when a UN mandate holder denies these crimes, it is, as I said, complicit with terror. It means that our system is failing from within. It means that, I don't know if human rights continue to have meaning, or do we need to do more to give them meaning? So this is the end. This is the kind of, the summary of our findings. It began when those organizations were not believing, and we understood that we have to take quick step to establish an archive that is both legal and historical. And I want to explain that because the crimes against women and children are the most fragile, the most disbelieved. Fragile in the sense that sometimes people share a fraction of information. Sometimes we know that it doesn't have legal value in courts, but we know there is a historical value to this, that perhaps in 5 years we'll get more information. And it happened that we continue to get information. We corroborate different testimonies and discover, unfortunately, the identity of the victims. Which is, I want to share, it's the hardest part, to start knowing the names and to see the faces of those victims that we were seeing murdered now with a name. And also the emotional toll, and I'm sure my colleagues here today will speak about it, the emotional toll of the entire team of the Civil Commission documenting these crimes, making sure we have this as a strong, solid legal basis. And I wanted to say about that in many ways we prepared for this moment. The initial phase of the struggle was advocacy. We all went around the world making sure the world believes, making sure experts understand what has happened, making sure we brief prime ministers, foreign ministers, security experts, really everyone who wanted to receive credible information. But now the journey is just beginning, because the families and the victims and survivors need to see recognition happening in courts. And I wrote here for myself, and I said it also at the Halifax International Forum, that we owe the victims far more than our sympathy. We owe the victims far more than our sorrow. We owe them justice. We owe them prosecutions that will happen around the world. And we have created the basis for it to serve domestic courts in other countries. I just want to give an example. Shani Luke is a German citizen. We want to make sure Germany uses our archive and even the testimony of her mother that we have being used in court, so we can see real rulings that anchor the historical truth. I want to remind us of the Nuremberg trials and how through law the truth is preserved. And we also owe them real reforms in the institutions that claim to protect human rights and that have failed. And we owe this also for our children. I want to say that after we published the Kinocide report revealing the systematic torture of families, which was also a result of systematically reviewing and analyzing the crimes. When you see it again and again and in different locations, you start to see the similarity of their conduct. And when we released the report, I thought, wow, it would take years until people understand. It will take, I don't know, perhaps a decade until this will be really understood. And then 3 weeks after the release of the report, sorry, I started hearing myself twice. Should I continue? It's coming from Dina, something? So I'll try to continue. Yes, okay, thank you. So 3 weeks after the release of the Kinocide report, after drafting it, I thought I would not be able to continue doing this. Families contacted us, not in other countries, but here in Israel. They told us, please come and help us. We need to get compensation, first from the government of Israel. Many families received social media videos and images to their phones. The terrorists live streamed the atrocities. So while we think of the victims, what we did is understanding of the family members that had to witness this, and that they are actually seeking recognition as terror victims, because at the moment, only those who are physically present at the site of the attack are receiving compensation. So now we have joined multiple cases here in Israel as experts, as legal experts, to make sure that they receive compensation, first here in Israel, but it will continue in other countries. We have joined a huge lawsuit of 400 victims in the US. And for us, I'll give you one example. For us, listening from, talking with families, hearing from them, Kochav, until we read the report of the commission, we felt we live on another planet. They felt like their suffering was not understood. So for me, it gives me strength to continue, to know that it matters, to know that it matters to the families, to know that it matters to hostage families. We've also submitted, together with Professor Yuval Shani, a legal brief for over 50 hostage families, and will continue to help them and assist them. So for me, it means the world that we're able to assist victims not far away, but really hear the ones that have suffered, which of course it's okay to always help everyone, but I mean the fact that the families here can get some kind of justice from what we have been doing for so many months, it means the world. So thank you. Thank you for bearing witness. Thank you for listening. I know it's hard, and I always find it difficult to share even fractions of what we know. So thank you for listening, and thank you for standing with us and making sure we stay strong.
You could see this very full room. We have more than 60 people here gathered in the Blossom Temple and more than 30 joining us through the live stream. So thank you for being with us. We, despite the technical glitches here and there, we do hear you coming through loud and clearly. So thank you for those words of introduction. I'd like to invite Dr. Benchmal to join us here at the front of the room. And on behalf of those who are gathered, I'm going to be offering a few questions, and all three of you are welcome to answer them in any way you choose. Maybe some questions will be more for one person to take the lead on, maybe, well, you'll decide. Even though we're in two different countries, we'll navigate well together. So the first question is really about Canadian content. I'll have your early findings came to the International Security Conference in Halifax in Nova Scotia just less than 2 weeks ago, I believe. So how were your findings received here in Canada? And how did the response here compare to the responses you have received from the European Parliament and other international audiences?
Thank you for this question. I think it's an excellent question. I want to say that it was very clear during the visit to Brussels in Sukkot on October, and during the visit to Canada in November, that we have, how would you say, what's the word? But we have entered a new phase. And I want to explain that. It was very obvious during the Halifax Forum that the world now is worried about the situation in Ukraine, about the situation in Sudan, about the situation in Gaza. And it seems that this what occupies Western leaders' mind at the moment, the most pressing global issues, the most pressing humanitarian crises. And in many ways, it felt as if I'm talking about the past, like the far past even. So I want to be very honest about that, and in the understanding that the next stage and the next phase that we are entering was the one that we have prepared for so long, the legal stage, which is long. Justice takes time. It takes time. It takes patience, and it's just this realization that we're now in a different reality, And this is also the time to create collaborations. So we've met with a group of amazing leaders from the Yazidi community that came to Israel and shared with us 5 years after they started documenting the war crimes against the Yazidi women and the testimonies that they have collected, and sharing good practices and sharing how they were able to transition their, not transition, like, yes, I think just transform their advocacy efforts into actual legal cases that were recognized as precedents all around the world. So it was interesting to learn and to create these collaborations, not only with Yazidi women, but with other women all around the world, with Iranian women, with women from Afghanistan, from Sudan. So we're trying to help. And even here in the women in Syria, I want to acknowledge what happened to the Druze community. Over 120 women and girls were kidnapped, and no one talks about them. So this is a time to create deeper collaborations more globally and to prepare for the next stage.
Thank you for sharing those examples of new bridges being built. You're right, those messages are not reaching us. Many diaspora Jews, and I imagine many of us gathered today, feel ourselves being shut out of many circles where we once thought we were among friends and like-minded people. And so maybe our other panelists could give some other examples of where relationships and allyships and partnerships are shifting. We've sometimes been surprised that there are new bridges being formed while others have broken down. Do you have any other examples to share, Dalia or Gila?
I can just go quickly. I want to start by just saying what a treat it is to be with this juggernaut of speakers. If you all in the audience had like any notion of the firepower of the women who are speaking today and what they have accomplished, including Rabbi Splansky and the team at Holy Blossom. It's really an honor. And also, I want to join my voice to Kochav and to just say you all have been working on this from the jump with real passion and commitment, and like we see it, and we thank you. I would just say, and I'm curious what Gila thinks, but you know, we both went to an event at the White House that then Vice President Kamala Harris held. I think really attempting to draw connections between other conflict-related sexual violence and what happened on 10/7. And I think it was an effort to say, sort of in the face of the resistance that Kochav is describing that we've all felt, which is that we've had decades and decades of work on this. We thought we had built sort of foundational agreements about how to think about this. And suddenly after October 7th, it felt as though everybody had benefited from that except women in Israel. And I think that these and Kochav said it better than me, but I think these acts of saying, this is exactly like that, this is like that, there is no difference. And to the extent that you are going to make claims, which are the claims we've really seen, Rabbi Splansky, of, you know, we believe all women except, that we take all women on faith that they are telling the truth, even if they don't have the evidence that we have learned you can't always amass, but not Israeli women. And so I think we have really found ourselves in a situation where the rules of decades of rules of building the law of conflict-related sexual violence just ran out of road when it came to 10/7. And we have had to, I think, reinitiate conversations that essentially say, there was a decision to be taken on October 8th, which was we are going to either treat this like every other one of the horrifying examples we've seen around the planet of systematically weaponized sexual abuse against women in a conflict, or we're going to treat it as something else. And the decision to say, not only are we going to treat it as something else, but Kochav started here, we're going to treat it as if it's a lie. And that any of the victims' claims are lies. Any claim to come out of Israel is a lie. That was a real choice. It's a choice. We're not going to justify it. We're not going to say, you know, things happen in war. We're going to make the choice that it never happened at all. In spite of, as Kochav says, this is the most filmed and recorded documentary event of sexual violence. And so I think what we are trying to do, this is a roundabout answer to your question, but we have to keep affirming that in the face of all, both the denialism and the sort of justifications or the whataboutism or the both sidesism, we have to continue to assert over and over and over again, no, this is in fact exactly like that. And the choice to say it is not that is a very, very fraught choice, because the next group will be subject to the choice that it is not that.
Thank you, Dahlia. I was actually just thinking about our time together at the White House and the privilege I had to be with you there and on the plane back to Toronto. And so for us in the room today, one of the things I'm thinking about with your question, Rabbi Slansky, is, you know, I was so moved on October 6th, the night before October 7th this year, from the emails from my non-Jewish colleagues and friends. And they were few, but they were still some that said, I just want to note that tomorrow is going to be a really hard day for your community. And it was Sukkot, right? So I got those emails after the holiday, but it was so meaningful to me that I took the time to reach out to every single one of them to say thank you. And Hanukkah is around the corner. Now, they were lighting my light, right? But I also want to be like a shamash. I also want to be a candle that lights for other people. And so there are places where I want to say and bring to the conversations with my non-Jewish friends and colleagues and my Jewish friends and colleagues. We have different opinions on a lot of things, and especially around this. I want to say, I know that you care. Let's have a conversation about this. Or to say, after today, I was at this program and this is what we talked about it. This too is part of the 16 days of activism. We are here as Canadians. We are here because of what happened in Montreal years ago. And we are here as Jewish women because this matters to us. This affects us on many levels and they are all tied together. And when I was in Israel earlier this year, one of the things I heard from those working with the victims and the survivors and the hostages was, oh my God, we were in North America and they're starting to forget. We cannot forget. We cannot allow the silence and denial to continue. And we cannot allow Jewish women and Israeli women to be erased in the narrative of 16 days of activism and general activism against gender-based violence. So 100% with everything that Dahlia said and what Kochad said, and how can we ourselves start to be making a difference in small ways? Being here today is activism. I just want to remind us we are here today and this is our activism and it can continue after we leave today as well.
So the denial is literally insult to injury. And I would love to know more about how you pursue justice. The Torah commands, tzedek, tzedek tirdof, justice, justice shall you pursue. That is a sacred obligation. How do you pursue justice when denial is a tactic for just shutting it down? Shutting down the conversation? Do you front the denial head on? Do you work around it? How do you undermine it? How does it work? How does the justice work function?
I'll just say that something that was very, gave me strength is the knowing that the truth has its own way of emerging throughout history. So that was something I knew. I remember saying, justice will be done. This is, even when I didn't have yet all the information that we have now, I knew that we will have enough information to show what happened. I didn't imagine the overwhelming magnitude of information that we have now, which is really shocking and difficult to even, grasp. But I want to say, you said tzedek, tzedek tirdof, and one of the first things that kept coming back in my head was sur mera aseh tov. Stay away from evil, do good. I was so shocked by responses of UN special experts responding to my emails saying, do you have proof for your allegations? This is so, this is not the language of the human rights system. Usually they express empathy. Please provide information. And to know that I remember my heart, right, racing. And I thought, no, I can't confront this evil face to face. We need to find our strategic allies. It kind of echoes what Gila just said. We need to find those who believe. We need to find those who want to stand and stand with us and understand better and echo the truth with their own powers. So this was just our strategy at the very beginning. Find those who are willing to believe.
Can I also just give a very lawyerly answer, since that's what you pay me for? My very, very lawyerly answer is that the internet is not real. And just because denialism, and we can have a conversation, and I remember, Gila, remind me if I'm correct about this, we talked a lot about social media and Twitter and the levels of denialism around, going after components of the New York Times story, right? And going after the authors of the story, going after witnesses. So we know that there is a media strategy that was launched on October 8th to foment doubt. And I am here to tell you, and I say this as a journalist, that that doesn't mean that that is true. And Kochav just said this so eloquently. It doesn't mean it's what people believe. It is what very, very fringe elements in some ways of the media purvey at massive scale, often using bots, often using misinformation, often bullying and terrorizing actual witnesses into silence. But it doesn't mean that things that happen on the internet are the way the world works. And I think that one of the ways, and this is so important for the work that Kochav is doing, one of the ways we have to think about this is not just that we are creating a record, because that's essential, it's existential, but also we are not acceding to the idea that just because lots of people say it didn't happen and those people have big platforms and are amplified, that doesn't mean that we cede the field to them. We don't stand back and say, therefore, I can't win because I only have 7 followers and 3 cousins. Like, we have to really, really, I think, disaggregate the conversation that happens in the media from the conversation that happens in actual institutions of justice. And so the single most important thing that I tell people is, by both building a record and by attempting to bring about actual justice in courts and in judicial entities and in decision-making bodies, that is where you are affecting change, because you are not going to change the mind of crazy people on the internet. And so I'm not saying this isn't a huge, huge problem, the amplification of denialism. It's its own, kind of, I think, the central sin of how this played out. But I just want to say that to the extent we allow it to silence us or to overdetermine what we think we can achieve, we are absolutely, absolutely ceding the field to bullies and ceding the field to people who actually don't care what the truth is. So I think that part of, and Gila just said this, but part of our work of activism has to be telling the truth for the sake of the truth and not giving in to people who say, but the truth is unknowable, or the truth is ambiguous, or the truth can never be found. It can be found. That's what courts do every day. And we have to be part of that.
Exactly. So I say, I completely agree.
And just to add to the tzedek tzedek tirdof, the pursue justice, one of the beautiful interpretations I learned about that is that why does it say righteousness twice, right? Tzedek tzedek tirdof, pursue justice, justice, is because the way in which you pursue justice has to be through righteousness. And for me, that means, who is being affected if I too accede to silence? Who am I going to affect? And that means I'm not only affecting the victims and the survivors and Kochav's team and Dalia's team and all those who are working on this, but I'm affecting survivors who've been impacted by watching what's happening in the world. Last week I gave a talk to rabbis on how to prepare your community to read Dina. And I spoke about the victims of October 7th. And one woman wrote, I'm an 86-year-old survivor, and this talk is doing me so much good. And in my head, I said, that's why I'm here today. And so it means not saying, I'm so tired of this topic, I'm not going to go anymore. Or, I'm not a lawyer. We're not all lawyers. We don't have the power that Kochav and Dalia have, but we do have other kind of power. And so it's to say, I know that this group, I'm not going to get them in the room. That's okay. But there's this whole other circle in my world, and together we're going to support survivors in these kinds of ways. Through righteousness, through remembering that I'm not going to give in to the silence, and I'm going to make a difference by using my voice, by having those difficult conversations and not throwing out the partnerships that are a little bit shaky right now. Some may never be rebuilt, and we have to accept that, but not all of them.
So the title for today's program is Still Seeking Justice. Many of us were here in March 2024 when we had the Part 1 program, Seeking Justice. And by chance, it was just a day or two after the first public testimonial was given by Amit Susanna, a 40-year-old lawyer from Kibbutz Kfar Aza. She broke the silence and gave her detailed interview to the New York Times. I understand there were private testimonials given before hers, but Amit was the first one to allow her face to be seen, for her name to be shared. And then others, other survivors, many women and men, have followed her lead. So all three of you have been involved in gathering testimonies and recording testimonials. I wonder if you could speak a little bit about, first, how does giving testimonial affect the survivor? Is it part of their healing process? And then if you would share a word about how receiving the testimonials have an effect on you as witnesses.
Yes. Thank you for this excellent and sensitive question. From the very beginning, once we decided on collecting testimonies, we knew we have to create a whole methodology around it, create ethical code, understand how recruit those who are best suited to take these testimonies, trauma-informed trauma experts that have a specific specialty in working with the victims of sexual violence. So it took us a month first to create the methodology of how to take these testimonies, and then the reality is very difficult. First of all, first responders and survivors and families are very, very traumatized. I am happy to say that for many of them, this is part of their healing. We give them a copy of this testimony. We do it in a Spielberg-like project, which is, we are not just taking testimonies also for historical purposes, but also for legal purposes. I want to say that we are making sure, for instance, that we get details on the kind of crimes that were perpetrated. Sorry. And then, so we do hear from them how healing it is for them. I do want to say, and I'm glad that you mentioned it, the difficulty for those collecting the testimonies. We provide help for the helpers, for those who collect the testimonies. We make sure they get emotional support. So we do all of this. And despite the high motivation to do this, it's difficult. It's difficult. We try to also minimize, for instance, the time or the amount of testimonies that one person takes. So this is the kind of work that we're doing, and of course, with a very close supervision on the entire process.
I want to be very clear. I'm a journalist, and I am not doing the work that Kochav and Gila are doing, which is, in the trenches, carrying this every day. But I will say, and I really noticed it in the past few weeks covering the Jeffrey Epstein survivors. First of all, there are no two survivors that are the same, and no two people respond in the same ways. But what I have learned, the two things I have learned throughout a career of covering sexual violence, is that loneliness and shame are the real bad guys here. And that if you are made to feel ashamed, if you are belittled, or as we just talked about, your truth is denied, it is a double assault. And being isolated and feeling as though you're alone in the world is a double assault. And all of the weight, if you think about it, of centuries of law that didn't believe women, right? Unless they were bruised and bleeding and their clothes were torn. All of that amassed weight existed until very recently in our lifetimes, existed to make victims feel ashamed and alone. So what I want to say is the power of this process, regardless of what you achieve, is breaking down the sense, and we heard this so much from the Epstein survivors, some of whom were children and who thought they were alone in the world and were made to feel small and inconsequential for most of their lives. And the work that we can see is in bringing them together. The power is in saying you are not alone and you have done nothing wrong. And so I just really, really think that the cornerstone of this has to be building a jurisprudence of power and not disempowering, shaming, belittling, denying, or isolating women, because that is what the law has existed to do to them in this context since the dawn of time.
Just to give some language to what we're sharing now is that means that the community, right, sexual violence and conflict creates fear and shame, not just among the survivors, but in the community. And that community fear isolates us from one another and also from survivors. So God forbid what you could have is a call for this program and nobody comes because it's just too scary to have. Instead, what you're seeing is that you're showing up on a Sunday morning, very early on a snowy day, and you're making it out because you're saying, we're not going to be afraid, or if we're afraid, we're going to be afraid together. We're going to come in community because Kochab and Dalia are going to go back and tell Israeli women, so many people believe you and so many people stand with you. What we don't want to cause, what Dalia is talking about, that isolation or that blame, is called secondary victimization. We never want to cause a victim any more victimization than they've already had. And so we have the power through our tzedek, through our righteousness, through our conversations, through our activism to break down the fear, the shame, and the loneliness. The last thing I want to say is about those receiving the testimony or those doing the work. That's called vicarious trauma. We haven't gone through the trauma ourselves, but it feels like we have when we are doing this work. So there are so many different kinds of self-care techniques that one can do, whether it's therapy, taking a break, yoga, whatever it might be. But when I was in Israel earlier this year and I met Kochav and her team, one of the first things I said to them was, how are you and who is taking care of you? Because that is really, really important. And so I just want to thank you on behalf of all of us, Kochav, for the work that you and your team are doing. And you should all go online. Irit Gazit, one of Kochav's colleagues, wrote a beautiful article about how to so carefully take the testimony of the victims and survivors of October 7th in a way that doesn't cause them trauma, and also how to be mindful of their own. So there's a lot of work out there on it.
And I'll share that article. Sorry to just add one more thing. In the Israeli context, I want to share that many victims feel distrust from the government. I remember at the very beginning, I said to myself, and I asked leading scholars in the world, should we be establishing a civil commission, or should we push the government to do this? And then a very famous scholar, I don't want to repeat her name because I'm not sure if she wants me to. She told me, Kochav, first of all, it has to be independent from the government for your findings to be believed. She knew much better than me what's coming, the kind of disbelief that Israel and demonization that Israel is now experiencing. But also she told me victims would want to come to you. They would want to come to, not to the police, but to other places where they feel safe, where they feel trusted. And many of them, not many of them, but I'll say some of them, as Dalia said, one is no victim or no survivor is like the other. Even families are very different, but they tell us, please don't share this with the government. I want it to be used in courts, but I wanted to do this outside from the government, and I don't want to share this with the police. Sometimes they're scared from the police. So I think there is a nuance to share about that.
So I'd like to pick up on that point. The sexual violence was perpetrated against individuals. And yet it's used as a weapon of war against a country. And that's always been. Yesterday morning, on Shabbat morning, at Torah study, we were studying the Dinah story. And everyone's talking around Dinah. We don't hear from her at all, and nobody asks for her opinion. Everyone's talking around her. And there's one word where two brothers refer to her as Achotenu, our sister. And while it's, you can debate why they said that or what was intended by referring to her as our sister, but it's the first time in the entire story where she is identified as a human being in relationship to other human beings. And so I want to ask the question about how this story is affecting Israeli society at large. I'll share with you one small experience that I had. I traveled to Israel November 2023 as part of a solidarity mission of rabbis with the Hartman Institute. And the very last thing we did during that week together was, I believe it was the country's first ceremony to name the sexual violence of October 7th. And it was held at the Hartman Institute. There were prayers, there was poetry, there was song, and there were certainly more people online than there were in the room because it was still such early days. And everyone in the room were women. And maybe 15 minutes into the program, a young male soldier came and joined the circle. And he was in his uniform and he put his gun under his chair, sat right in front of me. And he just began to weep and weep and weep. And only later did I learn that he was one of the soldiers who was responsible for carrying the broken bodies of the women on October 7th and assisting the survivors of the sexual violence on that day. And so he, as a soldier of Israel, was also certainly very deeply and personally affected. And I think it was his uniform that made the impression on me, right? He wasn't only there as an individual, but he was there as an IDF soldier representing the country. So I would love to hear, especially from Kochab and Dalia, who are now living in Israel. How do you see this story playing out sociologically, politically, if you wish, spiritually, psychologically, across the country, across the genders, across the ages and generations? What do you see taking hold now?
Wow. I don't know why, but this specific question is making me a bit emotional. I want to say that at the very beginning, I didn't want to share everything with the Israeli public. I was scared to add to the pain of the families, those who just learned of the death of their loved ones, to add to the imagination of what could have happened to their to the victims. And that was very difficult. And also, it was truly heartbreaking. And now that the way you presented it, it made me remember how heartbreaking it was, not just for me as an expert to feel the betrayal of those organizations or individuals within the UN that were turning their backs on us. It was also heartbreaking for me to see Israeli women feel so deeply betrayed. Women's rights activists that we went together to fight for women's rights, and then for them to feel so isolated, so the otherness that we felt. So the sexual violence created another layer of collective trauma, collective pain. And I want to say that after a few months of talking about it, explaining, many people ask me why do you think this has happened? And I talked about the intertwined reality of anti-Semitisms, of paradigms of Israel as portrayed as the local villain. But it took me a month until I returned speaking in Hebrew about these issues, speaking with the Israeli public more often. And then someone reached out to me and she told me, Kochav, I heard you say that it's hard for you to speak in Hebrew and it's hard for you to share with the Israeli public what you know because you are scared of how this will be painful for us. But I want you to know that we are strong and we are strong for you. And we want you to continue to fight because we cannot fight this, but you are fighting for us. So this is how I see I feel like Israeli women want us to fight. And Jewish women, of course, all around the world.
תודה, כוכב. So I think I would just add, and I just got a note from Holy Blossom too, that there's a question in the Q&A, Rabbi Splansky, that they're wanting me to ask if so. Maybe I'll just add just in response to Kochav that I think that it's trauma layered on trauma, layered on trauma, layered on trauma. And what you feel here is that it's very hard to disaggregate and unbraid the layers of trauma. And I will say that the events that I've done here have still been largely women. I don't know if that's Kochav's experience, but it's still in much the same way, by the way, that all sexual violence events that I do in my lifetime are huge majorities are women. And I worry that it's been metabolized into the larger trauma without a real deep reckoning about how this is different and needs to be thought of as something different. But I also think that without exception, this is a country of PTSD, and it's hard to prize those apart. And then let me know if you want me to read the question in the Q&A, Rabbi Splansky, if and when you want me to read it. Okay.
Thank you, Dalia. I think Gila will respond. And unfortunately, I'm not sure we're going to have time for questions from the chat there, but we have a few more here.
So one thing that I want to say in terms of what I've noticed in Israeli society, but this is specifically from the social service agencies and individuals that do that work that I work with, is that there's a sudden recognition of that trauma upon trauma that Dalia just mentioned. And so there's like an explosion of services that are trying to be offered, that the trauma of October 7th, while recognizing the trauma of the particular people that were harmed, it also unleashed all these people's trauma. And so now there's all these places that are open. Unfortunately, there isn't enough funding. And so there's all these offerings and there's a lot of volunteer things. And then there's funding that is badly needed for all different kinds of things. And the important point that Dalia just made is not to separate it from what happened. And then lastly is when you're listening to the victims and the hostages that are speaking out, it breaks those that are saying, this is my mission and I now have a new mission in life. Amazing, let them speak out. But it breaks my heart for the ones that say, I don't want to be speaking, but when I saw the denial, I have to speak. And so we are recreating victimization, or the world is recreating victimization by allowing that silence. And so just being here is breaking that silence.
Because Hanukkah is coming, I do want to call attention to a lesser known story of Hanukkah. This is rooted in North African Jewish tradition, that on the 6th or 7th night of Hanukkah, what is Rosh Chodesh Tevet, there is an evening devoted to Chag HaBanot, or a whole day devoted to the festival of the daughters, who are the unspoken or unsung heroes of Hanukkah. And one of them in particular does not appear in the books of Maccabees, but she comes from rabbinic imagination. And it's a story that is important in the context of our conversation today. But also, I just feel that when Jews, both women and men, hear of her, you'll never forget her. So very quickly, the way it goes, and again, this comes up mostly in rabbinic anthologies of interpretation that came forward out of the period of the Crusades. So it's believed that Matityahu had a daughter in addition to the famous sons of the Maccabees, and she's given the name Hannah. And there was at that time, and this we do know to be historically true, that the governor of the region would have right of the first night, which is that a bride on her wedding night would first go to lie with him and then to be united with her husband. And so Hannah stood before a crowd, including her brothers and her people, and she stood up in a public way and before her wedding day and tore her garment. So she exposed herself physically. And her brothers were so ashamed by her immodesty that they went to attack her. And she stopped them and she said, "You're so offended by what I've done here, and yet you're not doing anything to prevent what I must do tonight." And that, the rabbis say, was the rally cry that gave rise to the Maccabean revolt. That it was her call to action that inspired the courage of her people to fight back the enemies of the day. So whether or not Matityahu had a daughter, whether or not her name was Hannah, whether or not she stood before her people, God only knows. But the story is a very powerful one, and it stands really as a model of inspiration for every single person who makes of herself or himself an ally at this time. It does take stepping out. It does take a kind of vulnerability and an exposure. And many here might not yet know that Kohav has become really a lightning rod in international circles. And she withstands it and withstands it again and again because she's so devoted to this mission. So I guess we can conclude with a question for the three of you. How do you endure it? How do you continue? And where are the moments of winning justice that keep you going?
Well, first of all, I want to say that I feel like I want to hug all of you, Dalia, Gila, Rabbi El, and all of you there that I know sending us hugs and warmth in this very difficult mission that we took upon ourselves. I want to say that what gives me hope first and foremost is my children. I have 4 of them, 2 girls and 2 boys. The youngest is 4 almost. And I know that I have to continue for them. I can't lose hope, especially for them to see a future here in Israel and as Jews that feel safe in this world. Another thing that gives me hope and keeps us continuing is the sense of impact this has on the victims. I don't think we could have continued if we wouldn't have seen how much this means to the families, how much it means to them that we record their stories, that we take this to courts, that we stand by their side in this very difficult time, that we just recognize, we just say we believe. I think Gila and Dalia both said it so beautifully. The meaning of just telling someone we believe, we are with you, we know what you've been through, we know. We truly know, and we stand with them, and we stay in contact with those who wish to hear more. So it gives us strength and hope to continue. And all of us, all of our friends around the world, all of our, partners in this difficult mission of raising awareness, when this becomes more and more an issue that is difficult to share, that is more difficult to get empathy for as time passes. And we have to stay together to make sure the truth is not disappeared, that these stories are not disappeared. So thank you.
I always think of that beautiful, the beautiful teaching that we have to walk around with two pieces of paper in our pockets, right? One that says, I am nothing but a speck of dust, and the other that says, the whole world was created just for me. And I think that this last 2 years and change has been such a lesson in that both of those things are true, that there is a lot that we cannot control, much more than I believed. I actually believed that human rights law, international institutions built to protect justice, women's groups that purported to be for women's dignity and autonomy. I mean, I believed all of it. I believed deeply that we were building that. And I've had to learn in some of those contexts. This is where Kochav started, and I would end, that I am a speck of dust. That we didn't finish the work. We, in some ways, have to keep working. And also, what we're doing really matters for the reasons that Kochav said and that Gila said, and that we have to hold those two things at once. It's very painful to say that the work is essential. We can't walk away from it. Too many people are saying, oh, that was 17 traumas ago. Like, let's move on to the next one, without understanding that this has dealt a body blow to the entire corpus of international women's rights and women's law. And I think we have to just say to ourselves, okay, we thought we were sort of here on the arc of the moral universe. We're here. It's not where we thought we were, but we are not free to walk away from it. We have to do it. And that I think I would just note what Kochav said, which is people I did not know 2 years ago who've come together around these issues have become my closest friends in the world. They are the people that I talk to before I go to bed in the morning. They are the people I talk to first thing when I wake up. And so we've built a little community that is actually a vast community. Everyone in this room is part of it. And we'll get it done. And it might be, as Kochav says, for our kids or our grandkids. It's not going to be tomorrow, but we're not a speck of dust. We have to keep doing it.
That's so beautiful. Thank you, Dalia. And I consider you one of the people that I got to meet doing this work, and I'm so grateful for that. And Kochav, we're hugging you right back from this room. I hope you could feel that energy coming your way. And Kochav Kishma Kenhi, like your name is what you are. You are operating in a very, 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 very dark sky. We talked about it today, but your star, your name, Kochav, is so, so bright, and you are shining that light for all of us. And what gives me hope is the fact that you are all in this room, people like Cheryl and Megan and Rabbi Splansky, who are here in Toronto with us and are committed not to shy away from this topic. We read Dina every single year. The Torah is telling us you're gonna face this all the time, but don't shy away from it. There are new lessons every single year in the story itself.
And may I add also that testimonies continue to emerge. There's no 1 week that we are free from work or free from new stories that are asked to be told.
We are so grateful for the three of you taking your professional expertise and your talents of all kinds, mind and heart and neshama, and you're devoting it to this very hard work, painful work. It is on behalf of the Jewish people that you're doing this work, certainly on behalf of the people of Israel, and we do want you to know that we are with you, that we stand tall with you, and we will take everything that we heard today, everything that we learned today, and do our best to bring it forward. Please do tell the other circles that you're with in Israel and throughout the world that on a snowy Sunday morning, almost 100 people found the courage and the commitment to learn and to prepare for the days.
Thank you all. We're just going to take 1 minute or two to take us into our afternoon, because this was a very, very heavy topic. And we learned from the last time that we did a similar kind of a program that the feeling in the room is heavy, and it should be heavy. We are talking about a heavy topic, but that we are also people with full Sundays that need to go into our week, and we want you to do it safely. We want you to be able to drive safely and to think safely going into your afternoon. So I'm just going to share with us a few words, and then we'll close up the program and go into your day. You could feel free to close your eyes, or you don't have to close your eyes, but I'm just going to take a minute to ground us. If you want to close your eyes, I invite you to do that now. If not, you can leave them open with me. And if you could just place your feet on the ground so that you could feel the floor beneath you. You could sit up a little bit straighter in your chair and feel your spine. And you can tell yourself inside your head, I am safe. I am in community. We are together. And we're going to take a deep breath in, and I'm going to repeat those 3 sentences. Take a deep breath. I am safe. I am in community. Take another deep breath in. Exhale. And on the last inhale, we're going to say, we are together. We are together. And one more thought to give you. I want you to send out a ray of light to anyone in your life that you know needs it. You can send it out to one of the victims and survivors or the returned hostages that you know, or anyone in your life that needs that ray of light. Send it out from the center of your chest as you take another deep breath in. And on the last one, I'm going to ask us to thank ourselves for being here today as an act of activism. That is another Hanukkah candle that you are offering to the world. That is another way that we are breaking the silence. We're going to take one more breath in and thank ourselves on our act of activism today. And we should go into our week with safety, respect, with dignity, and with voice, and with the deepest, deepest of gratitude to Kochav and to Dalia, to Rabbi Splansky, and to Cheryl, and to Megan. Thank you all. I'm going to pass it over to you.
So it's pretty hard to speak at the end of what we just had and at the end of this amazing important but challenging discussion. But my name is Megan Stevens, and along with Cheryl, I'm one of the co-chairs of the Women's Advocacy Group, and just wanted to take a couple moments to say a few thank yous for all the people that were involved in putting this together today. First of all, it is such an honor to thank all of our speakers today. This topic, as we've been talking about, is not an easy one, but it is so clear from what we heard from our speakers about how important it is to shine a light on the experiences of women on October 7th. We know that's particularly important, not just in the face of silence that so many of us have found haunting, but also in the face of the ongoing denial. The framing of advocacy as being part of telling the truth and listening and being here for the sake of hearing the truth is really important. Kohav, thank you so much for joining us from Israel today to speak about your incredibly important work. That work, I think most of us find almost unfathomable in terms of how hard it must be. But what you're doing is so incredibly important. We stand with you. and we thank you for what you're doing. After you recently spoke at the Halifax International Security Forum, I was really moved by how you spoke there about the need for women to be in leadership roles in democracies, in part because, as you put it, women see the possibility for peace most vividly. I think your talk today also underscored why women need to push for peace. Violence that targets women, as too often is the case, is really devastating. And when it is, as it is too often the case, brushed aside by those in positions of power, and as we've seen since October 7th, all the more so even for Israeli women, we need women to step in because we know how devastating this can be. So may your call for more women peace makers in leadership be heard because the world really needs that. Dahlia, we are always fortunate to have you join us in our discussions at Bully Blossom. We're really lucky that you've become one of our regulars. You bring wisdom, you bring sensitivity, you bring thoughtful insights both from the world of law, but also journalism. And we really, really appreciate you for continuing to join us, even though you're now in Israel. And Gila, you have also become one of our very favorite guests here at the Women's Advocacy Group. What I love about hearing you every time you speak, I work in a world, I'm a lawyer, I do a lot of work representing complainants in sexual assault cases. We talk a lot in our world about trauma-informed support. It's often just about work. Gila, you really know how to make us feel restored and more whole. Every time I'm in your presence, I feel that way, and I learn so much from you, so thank you. And Rabbi Zelensky, thank you for all you do to let us hold these hard and challenging discussions, for supporting us in that work, and for always bringing incredible insights from Torah and Jewish learning to inspire us in our ongoing pursuit of justice. It's incredible, and we know that wouldn't happen in every synagogue. So thank you. Thank you also to Women of Bully Blossom for sponsoring this event today. These things wouldn't happen without their support. Thank you to the wonderful staff here, Deanna Levy, Lindsay Mockler, Joanna Beeman, Temple Livestream, and Admin for their support today. I also want to take a couple minutes to thank some of the amazing women members of the Women's Advocacy Group. If anyone is interested in being a part of our group and helping us put together these discussions, come and let us know. But we've had really great help from Marla Spiegel, Corinne Black, today helping get people to the right places, Shelley Birnbaum as well. Shelley also was the one who helped to arrange to have Nancy Miller from Jewish Family and Child Services available to provide the support so many people would need today. And then I need to say a very, very special thank you to Cheryl. We are co-chairs of this group, but she has been the driving force behind today's talk. She pushed for a follow-up to our March 2024 discussion. She has done the work to ensure that we could have join us here from Israel. And then she's managed the many, many, many logistics of putting today's session together. She's really a wonder, and I'm very lucky to get to work with her. I also want to say a special thank you to Katie Lehman, who's also one of the members of our group. You're going to have a little parting package when you leave. Please be sure to pick it up. Katie has put together a package that includes 2 Hanukkah candles. And she's included some very meaningful reflections. You'll have the blessings, you'll have a beautiful poem that Cheryl has found. But as a group, we knew this was heavy. We wanted you to leave today remembering that Hanukkah teaches us that even in darkness, light can endure. So this is a hard topic. It's been a hard month in my work world too. But as most of you know, when we light our Hanukkahs, we use one candle, the shamash, or the helper candle, to light the others. And as Katie notes in that insert ill date, the 2 candles really symbolize connection and solidarity. So we hope that you will use these candles next weekend, you light your hankias for the first time. You can do that even if you're not Jewish. You'll find it's a really beautiful, beautiful practice. And when you do that, we hope these candles remind you that when we come together, our light grows. So as Gila pointed out, there is such an important power in coming together as a community and thinking about and hearing these tough stories. I also want to acknowledge that in the room here, we probably have about 10 men who have joined us tonight. As Dahlia pointed out, these conversations tend to be one that women come to, but we need the men to stand by us. We need them to also hear these hard truths and to be our allies in this work. So we know this was not an easy discussion, but your presence, all of you in this room today and online, have added light to this gathering, and we hope you leave knowing that we are stronger and brighter together. Thank you all.